The hosts feel it would be a little unkind to present this podcast without just a word of friendly warning. We are about to unfold the story of Frankenstein, a man of science who sought to create a man after his own image without reckoning upon God. It is one of the strangest tales ever told. It deals with the two great mysteries of creation, life and death. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you. So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now's your chance to. Well, we've warned you.
Hello and welcome once again to the Frankencast. I'm the mad scientist, Anthony Bowman. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm joined as always by...
Estoy cadáver reanimado es Eric Velasquez. My pronouns are also he, him.
Yeah, so this is another, we keep running into all these new releases coming out, causing us to kind of shuffle our schedule and everything, so...
yeah, but this was in book form.
Yeah, so this isn't what we said we were going to get to, but we'll get you back to our regularly scheduled program next week, but we are super excited that this just came out and we wanted to talk about it. So this is...
Can I say it?
Yes.
Chicano Frankenstein. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
By Daniel A. Olivas.
Yes. So this is one I've been kind of following. It's been kind of on our radar for a little while. He announced that it was coming out, and then we got advance copies a little while ago and kind of set them aside because I didn't want to talk about it too soon, and then we were like, oh shit, it's coming out, we need to get on this. So
right.
Definitely excited to finally get to talk about it. I guess because this is so new, we should kind of do our new release thing here, and we could talk generally here at the top before we get into intense spoilers and stuff.
Yeah, so this is a politically charged book, and I'm here for it.
Yes. This is definitely a book that takes place sort of in the wake of the Trump America.
Mm-hmm. It's very alternate history, right?
Yeah, particularly Trump had a lot of awful things to say about all kinds of people, but his specific antipathy towards Latino, specifically Mexicans, but just anyone of any kind of Latinx descent.
I don't think he knows the difference, honestly.
Yeah, he's definitely the kind of person that would, a Cuban, that's just kind of Mexican.
He would tell me to go home, to my home country, not knowing that Puerto Rico is American property, so...
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so, this is clearly specifically about Mexicans, but also is really just about anybody brown at all, really.
Yeah.
But, the way that... I was pretty impressed with the way that this manages to kind of use the Frankenstein monsters as a metaphor for Mexican people, but then also have Mexican people in the story, and so it is dual layered, where you're getting their actual stuff that they're dealing with being in this sort of terrible version of America that we actually live in.
Yeah.
But then also having this metaphor where we can kind of play with that in a little bit edgier way. We will early on in the book get the term Stitcher, which is sort of a racial slur for reanimated corpse people.
Right. So many people just say casually because that's exactly what happens, right?
Yeah, it works really well because it's every time it has a similar cadence to more familiar racial slurs,
mm-hmm.
and so every time you read it, it does kind of just feel like it's a knife twisting in you a little bit. It's unpleasant to read, but it's obviously not as unpleasant as the real words that we don't want to experience in our real life. So it worked well in that way, where it was you could kind of have your cake and eat it too, as far as dealing with these really edgy topics.
Another thing that I really appreciated was there's a lot of, I don't know if it's intended, I feel like it is, subtle commentary, such as people who pass for white or pass for living in this case.
Yes.
We have a character that it's like, oh, I didn't know you were one of us, you know?
Yes. Yeah, I put that too. That definitely was like a passing thing there. Clearly this was written by, a Latino man, and it's clear that like he's
Chicano is very his big part of his identity, as a matter of fact, which is, that's makes sense. I get it.
Yeah. And I feel like whenever you get census type forms, there's always like, there's two questions in like the race area or whatever. And it's like
ethnicity.
Yes. And so like, that's it's weird how that kind of stuff works. And like, some of it seems like, it's the government trying to like compartmentalize cultural identities, and it's very strange. It made me want to like research and like look at like, okay, so why would like what makes a Chicano identity different than a Latino or a Hispanic, and like,
oh brother, how long do you got?
Yeah, I mean, like I did, it was like I kind of vaguely understood those, but like I would definitely like to hear your experience with those terms and like what what they mean to you.
Okay, so let's talk about this if we're going down into it. So generally, I would consider myself Latino, Boricua, Borican, however you want to go there. I do have Taino in my family, even though I'm not necessarily part of, I'm not super affiliated with the tribe or anything like that. But there is also a lot of, as you were talking about, subdivisions, right? So we have the Chicano culture, which is primarily in like Southern California and around that area. There's Norteño culture, which is on the other side in Mexico, but, it's a little bit closer to the border, and it's even came over into Texas. And that's what a lot of Mexican or Texan and Tex-Mex, I guess, people, I don't think that's right, though. Yeah, so, I mean, there's all these subdivisions of people that willingly, I guess to a degree, we put ourselves in little boxes, but they're also the cultures that came with us, right? Because a lot of Chicano and Mexican culture in general, they're Native Americans that were just basically interbred with Spanish people. And a lot of the Spanish took over because of the, Catholicization of basically that side of the country, or that whole region. I mean, then you also have, like, a lot of people will try to exclude Brazilians because they're Portuguese. They're not Espanol.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I think that's wrong because a lot of them are also, descending from Native Americans. So the fact that they just speak a different Romance language is
they were just colonized by a different batch of Europeans.
Exactly. Slightly different, though. Not too different. Literally on the same peninsula. Just part of it was like, we're going to be a little contrary to the rest of you after the Reconquista. But yeah, I mean, did I teach my college course there?
Yeah. I mean, it's like I remember the last year when there was like I remember seeing that like there was like Hispanic History Month, and I saw a lot of like on social media people pushing back and being like, we're not going to use Hispanic anymore, we're going to use Latinx. And that, like, I feel like probably a lot of white people would assume those two terms are interchangeable, but they're not.
No, they are not. That is only Spanish speaking. Hispanic is only Spanish speaking. And even then, a lot, like I said, with Taino culture, like that's Cuba, that's Puerto Rico, a few other places, they're like, no, fuck you.
Yeah. And it seemed like that's specifically because, like we were just saying, like, Hispanic is tying these, American cultures to their colonizers, Spain. And, I mean, we see that a lot in America with, like, American indigenous people wanting to be separate from, like, their white colonizers. And,
well, it also helped that the white colonizers were like, yes, we will make you very separate from us.
Right. Yeah. So, like, that's something where it's like, these are cultures that, like, we're interacting daily, and a lot of...
They all have a rich history, each and every one.
Yeah, and a lot of the average, like, white American person probably doesn't either knows a little bit and not as much as they think, or they know nothing and don't care. And I think that's the cool thing about this book, is because it could have just been like, okay, we're using this Frankenstein metaphor to talk about other people, but we're not going to like, deal with the reality. But the way that this is interconnected, it's like, we're able to handle it on a deeper level with the metaphor, but also we're going to talk about actual Chicano stuff.
Right. We're going to give you that history.
Yeah. There's a lot about food in it, and the way people talk about food that like I thought was really beautiful, because it's just kind of like, a lot about that, and I thought that the what was or like the
chorizo con huevos or
con weenies, and it was and it was like, yeah, of course there is. There's the nice Mexican restaurant version of dishes, but then there's also like poor families who just throw hot dogs together. That's part of culture too, and I like
a Puerto Rican dish. Can I tell you this?
Yes.
I don't know if you'll understand it, but it's hot dogs con cheese. is a Puerto Rican dish. It is what it says. Literally hot dogs, cheese, and like an empanada wrapper and fried.
Okay.
It's good, but it's also probably awful for you. It would be great fair food, honestly, if someone got into that.
Yeah, and like that, there was something real about that, where it's like, this isn't the restaurant culture version of these food items. That, like the same with like just standard
it's like Chinese food. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like they're like, nah, this ain't our food. This is your food, just done in our style almost.
Like, of all the American-style restaurants I've eaten, like, I've never had tuna casserole or, like, beanie weenies, these things that my mom made constantly when I was a kid.
That'd be amazing.
It felt like, okay, yeah, I feel like I'm really getting a snapshot into, like, a real culture past the, like, facade culture that, we're exposed to, just like,
Right.
This everything about this felt very lived in to me.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. This is a real world, and that's really cool. Another thing, just as a warning, they call certain pan dulces conchas. Do not say that around, I believe, Cubans and Dominicans, because that means an entirely different thing.
Okay.
It's the lady bits and those, like, that's the difference between their dialogue and kind of the slang. Right.
Does that come from like a conch shell kind of thing? Is that like the
exactly?
The root word?
Yeah, meaning conch. Yeah, conch shell.
Yeah, that makes sense. Why that you might see like a sweet cake and be like, that kind of looks like a shell, and then also a vagina also can kind of look like that shell.
Porque no los dos.
Yeah, exactly. So
hey. Yep.
Yeah. So. So if you haven't read this and don't want spoilers, like, I definitely would say this is absolutely worth checking out. It, like we've been saying, it really manages to deal with some difficult topics in a few different layers that make you understand things that you might not have understood before. And
it definitely helps you, like, it makes you ask questions, and it teaches you. There's a little bit of Spanish in here. Not like, an in-depth degree, but you're going to learn some Spanish if you read this, so enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a few, like, there was somebody kept saying it was like I think I looked it up, and it's like either way was basically what it meant. But like they kept saying it was like contextually I kind of understood what but I was like, they're saying this so often that I want to know exactly what they mean, and I looked it up.
Niimoto?
Yes. Like that felt also kind of lived in. It was just like, like people who speak both languages and kind of like, flow from one to the other, and that felt very real as well.
Yeah. Yes, it is. It's a very... So once again, we are now hopping on spoiler trains. If you want to go in fresh, hop off now.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, so let's kick off with chapter 1 there.
So, well, even before, one thing about but this, like, has
this bitch. Yeah. Cadwalder.
Yeah, the structure of this, we've got, like, there are, like, long chapters. There are also occasional, like, really short chapters that are kind of a through line. And then there's also these things that are not numbered chapters, which are various transcripts of, like, news programming or newspapers or transcripts from, like, recordings from the White House and stuff.
And it's interesting to me that a lot of them come in like either right before or right after the man. That's the main character, by the way, is the man. He has no real name other than that. I mean, he kind of gets one later, but that's not his per se.
Yeah, it felt like a nice way to like do the Frankenstein monster thing where like he never gets a real, but he's not the monster, he's the man. He is a man. We're giving him a human identity. We're not going to treat him as if he's an other. It seemed like he's being introduced to people. I think he has a name that the characters within the story are hearing, but the like Daniel, like he's specifically not giving us that name so that we're getting that sort of Frankensteinian experience of like this sort of anonymous, nameless person.
Well, we know the monster as either the monster or the creature or the wretch in some cases, so why not the man, right?
Yeah.
But, and it is interesting. So kind of to back up a little bit more, the entire process of reanimation, which that's what it is. The man is a reanimated person. It somehow, they put you together however you died, effectively. Like, let's say your arm got cut off, they will replace that arm with a fresh one that gets you working. But the process effectively wipes your mind, except for you basically still retain your skills, everything you knew beforehand. The only difference is, for some reason, like personal history is wiped out effectively.
Yeah, and so like the idea here, because like the first little bit, I was like, I don't understand why they would want this, but it seems like something has happened where reproductive rates have dropped. Drastically.
Gee, and that doesn't sound weird at all, or not like our current predicament.
Right. Yeah. So like the whole idea here is that like this is a way to bolster the economy. Just like you can sign to be an organ donor in this world, you can sign to be a reanimated person so that they can just get people back into the workforce.
Right.
And yeah, like you said, they even like they give you a little bit of plastic surgery so you don't quite look like you used to. So you're not going to remember your family, and if somehow they happen to see you, they're not going to recognize you. So they can still mourn their dead relative and move on with their lives, and you can basically just be a cog in the capitalist machine who still knows how to do their capitalist thing, but doesn't know how to be a person anymore, like an individual.
God, that's so gross. But so something I could see corporations getting more involved in.
Yeah.
Just saying. All right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Cadwallader's anti-Stitcher law, quote unquote. That even sounds awful, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like every word in that. None of it sounds good. Okay.
Right. Yeah. So the law is basically these reanimated corpses. It's happening all over the world, but we now have a conservative president. He specifically kind of avoids talking about political parties, but it's clear that this is a hard right president who is using like Americans' fear of what these reanimated people mean, both in terms of like being afraid of death and also being afraid of losing your job to a person. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that one had me going each and every time I read it. We're losing our jobs to those other people. They're not the non-living people. Yeah, I know
exactly.
What you're saying.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, again, this is very intentional that like we're able to handle immigration issues in America, or the way that people see immigrants. They're basically dead people who have immigrated. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, so this
another point they're going to make later. It's not right now. Is that everybody else in the world has no issue with this whatsoever. They're like, thumbs up. And of course, America, with our self-righteous bullshit, we're the ones that are like, nope, we're going to regress, baby. We can't go past that 1950 mark.
Right, yeah. Surprise, and one kind of like just sort of like, the president is a woman.
Yeah, Mary Beth Cadwallader.
Cadwallader, yeah, but like she's, very Trumpian in every way. Like when we get the transcripts, like she's just,
such a
behind
piece of
closed, behind closed doors, using all kinds of awful slurs and terms and cursing at her staff. Just she kind of reminded me of, if you've seen Veep, Selena Myers.
Just a grosser version of her, just slightly though.
Yeah. If she had really shitty politics on top of being a bad person, that's what we're dealing with here.
Honestly, I think this is one of my most hated villains.
Yeah.
Probably because it's so real.
It's so real. And, it's like, I think she actively does hate the reanimated people, but also she sees hating them as a useful political tool.
Right.
We're midway through her second term as president. She's very concerned about the midterm election. She wants to maintain...
What's her second year, right? Not even her second term. This is her first term, but second year.
Oh,
right?
okay, yeah. Because they talk a little bit about that, like, she will eventually, like they're thinking down the road of like the vice president being the next candidate and all that. Yeah. But it's all about, she wants to maintain control of the House and Senate so that she can push through whatever she wants and maintain control of the Supreme Court. This is all the kind of nonsense we have lived through in America lately. Yeah. So yeah, it feels all too real. But then yes, there's this whole thing where like she's like, I can use this distrust among certain branches of America to win over like political favor, basically.
Yeah. Can you imagine what the evangelicals are doing with this?
Right? Yeah. That is one angle he doesn't really deal with, which would have been interesting.
It's probably for the best, let's be honest.
Right, yeah. That's a whole other can of worms, for sure.
Yeah. All right, we ready to move on to chapter 1?
Yeah, let's do it. So
we get the intro of the man, and he's just in a sparse kitchen, his kitchen, eating a very sparse meal. Everything is sparse about this guy's existence.
He's a really interesting character. I feel like this is the first time I've read something that like a Frankenstein monster type character being a main character where I didn't instantly just be like, I relate so hard to this character, because he's kind of a cipher to start with. He doesn't, because of this whole weird process, he has very little personality to start with because he's trying to figure out who he is. And so it did take me a little bit to kind of like find my way into like getting this character, because I just there wasn't a lot to really like hang your hat onto, which is by idea, by intention. Right? It's just it's an interesting way, like it's very rewarding as it goes, and you start to get to know him and see him figure out who he actually is. Like I feel like this shows like a lot of trust in the reader. Like you kind of have to be like, I'm gonna go along for the ride here, even though I don't quite understand this character to start with.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty nice actually being treated like an adult by your books.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, most of books do that. It's just there are a few that try to spoon feed you everything. And those
I was actually having a conversation just yesterday about how like the popularity of YA books among adults has kind of made adult books get dumbed down a little bit because they want to like be as easily pick upable as like a Hunger Games type book, whereas this, like, I don't think it's like super complicated, but it does make you think a little harder than your standard YA book.
Like, I don't want to be insulting, but like the YA books to me, they're cheeseburgers. This is a steak, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, is it A1 Wagyu? No, but it's still pretty good steak.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a very accurate way to look at it.
Yeah. It's also because I'm fat.
But yeah, as you said, like he's just kind of sitting there. Everything's sparse. He's kind of alone. And then a woman comes in, and we find out that like he has. It's not a one night stand. They have. This is like their second or third.
Stand. Yeah.
Yeah. They're like. They're not close yet. This is still kind of like a hookup, but
this is the early stages of a relationship. If one were to ever appear.
Yeah.
And I like that she calls him guapo. Guapo.
Yes.
Yeah.
Handsome. Yeah, so they're kind of flirty. They're kind of like figuring out their sort of banter. She's kind of like jokingly judgy about his breakfast selections, and she's like, "Why don't you have, pan dulce?" And she's like, "Next time I come over, I'll bring the good stuff." And he's kind of like,
because he has wheat toast with butter, and that's it.
Yeah, that's all every breakfast. That's all he has, just plain toast and butter.
Right.
And we learn that they both are in the legal profession. That's how they've met. He's a
They met in
paralegal.
Yosemite.
Yes. She's a partner at a law firm. They work at different firms, but they met at a conference.
Yeah.
After she leaves, we get this to kind of show that, like, the way that their brain, like the reanimated brain is, he's like, I have to think really hard to remember her name, otherwise it'll just kind of flit away like everything else.
Right.
So, you know, he focuses and he's like, okay, her name was Faustina Godinez. And he's like, I'm going to remember that.
Faustina, I was like, where's this going? Faustina.
Yeah, there's definitely a Faust reference there. Like, it's, you know, it's not like super hard. Like, you know, there's not a lot about Faust within her, but
it's more Angelica or something. You know, Beatrice would probably be even better if you're an Alighieri fan.
Yeah. But there's several little references to various works of Gothic fiction, and, you know, specifically Frankenstein, of course.
The Clerval Institute. Clerval Institute.
Yeah, and then there's somebody named Elizabeth Lavenzo.
Literally Elizabeth Lavenzo.
Yeah.
Hot damn. All right.
But yeah, so I think, like, then, you know, she leaves and we get the second chapter, which is her at work.
And her friend Grace. What is it, Sumaki?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, Grace is Asian, and, like, they're good friends. They have a lot of playful banter. They, like, pick on each other. They both call they both end up calling each other racist, sort of jokingly as it's going, like, in that way that you know when you're, you know, comfortable with a friend who is,
you can say shit. You can talk shit.
Yeah. Like, you know, I know amongst our group of friends, a lot of the various brown and black people in our friend group will sometimes jokingly call each other, like, minority and stuff like that. Like, you know, they're
not guilty. I'm guilty. Yeah,
sure. You know, you gotta, like, find your people, and, like, they have, like, a really good friendship, and it feels very contrasted to the previous scene where, like, clearly Faustina cares about the man, but, like, they haven't quite gelled because his personality is not really there yet.
Right, and Grace is even like, hey, you know, tell me more about this. She wants the chisme for those for you. She wants all that good stuff. And you know, obviously Faustina, she's not there yet, right? She's
right.
Like, not yet. Not
but she does
third hookup. What?
Yeah. She does agree. Like, okay, we'll get drinks tonight. I'll tell you a little bit more. There's not much to tell, but you know, we'll hang out after work.
Right. And she almost got her pen dulce before.
Yeah, she wanted it at his house, and then she gets to the meeting, and there's a big plate of them, and, like, the boss keeps telling her, no, wait, those are for a meeting, and she, like, never gets one. It's really funny.
But then Leonard and another associate, Leonard is another partner, by the way. He does get his pen dulce and one for another guy who's running a case because they have to leave.
Yeah.
Which is funny because she's like, hey, what about me?
Yeah. This is a pretty good gag.
Yeah.
And so after that, we get one of the first of these, like, little short chapters. Like, the one sort of personality trait we have about the man is that he runs. Right. It seems to be, like, the only thing. It feels like he's trying to connect his mind and his body, and that maybe those haven't quite connected yet, and that this is, like, his attempt at that.
Right, because his left arm and his left leg are not the parts of him that were initially born with him, right?
Right.
They're the added on parts. But also, did you notice that they were, like, was it his left arm that his left arm that he does the circular motion 3 times to stretch out? It's like he's stretching out those parts, like you said, to get them to work in sync better. Yeah. And he always does the same pattern, though. He stretches a little bit, goes for a run, and he always turns right, or is it left at the end of the street? Yeah, it's left. So yeah, he always turns left on Hurlbut Street and Pasadena Avenue, and they make a point. He makes a point of stating that specifically.
Yeah, and I don't. I mean, I'm sure that those are actual streets. Mm-hmm. Hurlbut is also the last name of one of the screenwriters of, I think, Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein. Yeah. I don't know if that's an intentional reference or not, but
I feel like it is, and then Pasadena is maybe an actual street.
Yeah. But yeah, pretty much throughout, we'll get these, chapters where it feels like nothing necessarily is happening, but over the course of the book, we get little bits more each time we get the running scenes, and you start to realize that this is the way that he's becoming more himself.
Right.
And yet, I mean, this first one, like, it's like not even a full page, and it's basically just, like you said, it just describes his running routine.
Right. And then we get our first transcript of the Oval Office meeting.
Yeah.
With Cadwallader, Iskandari, who else is in there? Van Gelderen. Basically, the other characters don't matter. It's POTUS. Everyone else is chorus, right?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And so she has signed the anti-Stitcher bill, and, you know, is trying to figure, like, she was like, okay, that was good. What can we do to make things worse? How can we really capitalize on this?
Did that boost my my poll scores, right? That's all she cares about.
Yeah, everything is about the polling numbers that will allow them to maintain control.
By the way, there's a great bit at the very end. It just feels so good when it happens.
Yes.
But we'll get there.
Yeah.
But the idea is, let's do worse stuff, right?
Yeah, and like here, if you're missing the metaphor, it gets pretty obvious that, like, the way she's talking about reanimated people is the way that Trump talked about Mexicans to, like, win his, you know, the bad hombres thing. Like, it feels very much like that.
And we know certain Southern senators or House members probably talk this way about other groups of people as well.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And there's also there's a bit in there where, like, the president keeps calling the reanimated people just Frankensteins.
Right. Someone tries to correct her. No, you mean Frankenstein monsters.
Yeah. And that bit is obviously just funny for us, you know, Frankenstein obsessed people. Mm-hmm. But it also, again, felt like a sort of talking about, like, the, you know, slurs and the way we choose to, you know, like, use terminology for people that they may not necessarily want. Like,
right.
You know, it feels like, you know, for us, like, seeing stuff about, like, Romani people and the G slur and stuff like that, like, or in America, indigenous people, you know, and all of the various incorrect terms that get attached to them. Mm-hmm. It felt very much like, well, I want to call them this, and I don't care what they think, so I'm going to use the term that feels right to me.
I'm a free American. I should be able to say what the hell I want.
Yeah. So, you know, again, definitely, like, playing from a few different angles at, like, the way that America looks at marginalized people. Right.
But ultimately, I believe their final decision to really just crank up the bullshit meter is to say, hey, let's just start running a bunch of raids and, like, even outlawing the whole, like, the rest of the Stitcher process, right? Like, even though some of these are legal, we're going to go deeper. You know?
Yeah.
Even the ones that are legal, we're going to hit them.
Yeah, it's just, you know, it's the same thing that we see over and over again, where it's like, okay, we're going to take away this right, and then as soon as that is normalized, that gives us a chance to go further, take more away, continue to marginalize. That doesn't
sound like the right-wing playbook at all.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so then I think we go to chapter 4, which is the man waiting in a pharmacy line.
Oh yeah. We get our clock, basically, our countdown.
Yes.
Because he's in line. There's a kid who notices something different about him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, his mismatched hands, and, like, the kid kind of is like, "Hey, Mom, why has he got mismatched hands?" And she's just like, you know, drags her kid away, like, I don't want anything to...
Goes to the opposite side of the street.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then, like you said, we get some stakes in that he gets up to get his... Part of the reanimation process is you have to continue to take these prescription drugs to keep you alive.
Right, and even after that, you only got 20 years max.
Yeah. But the pharmacist is like, yeah, you know, there's been a run on these, you know, he's like, it's just like how, you know, during COVID, everybody wanted hand sanitizer and toilet paper. Now, because of the Stitcher law, everybody wants these drugs. So, you know, we got a shortage. I can only give you half of your prescribed dose.
Right, but don't worry about it, because we're not going to make you pay till we get the whole dose.
Yeah. So just, check back once you're running low again, and, we'll get you the rest of it. Everything will be fine.
Right. And all right, so legitimately, this pharmacist, I think, is a pretty good person. Because they're not outright saying certain things, but they are helping out the man to degrees. Because they're like, okay, come back in a couple weeks. We'll try to have it for you there. Don't worry about paying for it. It's not worth paying for now. Pay for it later when it is. Yeah.
I think this is definitely a person who's in a shitty situation and is just a worker trying their best, and that's it's pretty good.
We need more people like this pharmacist. At least that's my read on it.
That's kind of how I felt about it too. And then from there, we get to the next chapter where Faustina and Grace are having drinks, and discussing Faustina's new relationship,
and Grace's marriage with Brandon and the kid that came from it. But okay, so Grace is kind of like, hey, listen, whatever happens, happens. I feel like Grace is absolutely a bisexual that's kind of into Faustina. Because she's like, yo, listen, if anything ever happens to me, you can hook up with my man.
Yeah, she's very, like, fun and sort of just, like, along for the ride. And, you get an idea where she's like, well, I'm married now, so, like, I don't, get to have, like, crazy times anymore. And so I'm living vicarious through you. Like, I want to hear about your, dating life.
But to a degree, it's almost like she's like, hey, people are going to cheat. Marriages are going to fall apart. How cynical is that, though? But I don't know. She takes it with a smile, so whatever.
And this chapter is where we find out about the 20-year thing. And, Faustina's like, I don't, if I decide to, like, get really serious about this guy and he dies in 20 years,
where am I?
I'm going to be, old and not able to find a new partner at that point, and it's going to be lonely. Like, I don't know if I want to commit to this.
Hilariously, that is the exact situation her mother is in, effectively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True, yeah. But, Grace is like, you can't think about it that way. Just, like, think about today. Like, you like this guy? Hang out with this guy, It could last 1 year and then is over with, or it could last 10. And, you just gotta, stick with what's in front of you and figure out, let tomorrow figure out tomorrow, basically. Right. Which I think is generally good advice.
Right. All the while, Grace is drinking an awful, vodka stinger?
Yeah, they kind of have this long-running gag where they like to get weird drinks from like old movies that they like and just try them out. And like the whole thing, she's like, oh, this is awful. But I'm going to keep trying it. And over the course of their they have a couple of drinks or whatever. And by the end of it, Grace is like, no, I love this drink. This is great. Like,
it's because she's drunk.
Yeah, exactly. And I think so after they finish their drinks or whatever, Faustina is like still like she's just really trying to figure out like how she feels about this. And she's like, there's a bookstore close by. I'm going to walk over there. Maybe there are books about like self-help books. Yeah, relationships with Reanimated. And in fact, she does find a couple and flips through them and is like,
for lovers of the Reanimated.
Yeah, for the lovers of the Reanimated. And she's just like, no, and this is the book that's written by Dr. Elizabeth Lavenza. But Faustina's like, no, I'm going to figure this out myself. Like, I don't need some silly self-help book.
I'm going to be real. That's probably the best way to do it, is just fucking do it. Because, like, most of the self-help books are just going to say, just fucking do it, effectively.
Yeah.
It'll be page 225 of whatever, book. But, yeah, it's just live your life.
Exactly, yeah.
Done.
And so, she just leaves the store without buying anything. And then we go to another chapter of the man running. And this one, it's it's pretty similar to the first one, although he's like, he feels a little distracted. He sees some crows eating trash.
I mean, Burger King is trash. Yeah, let's be honest.
Yeah, it's like a Burger King wrapper with like part of a burger still in it that the crow's trying to get to or whatever. And yeah, he's just kind of, this one doesn't feel like there's much happening, but again, like it's just, it's sort of like slowly teasing out like him figuring stuff out.
And then we get the script for the television commercial. You know the one where people are being like normal people and having a small altercation, and there's fire behind the image of them doing that, and it's just talking about how awful these people are. Yeah,
Right.
that's the commercial that we're seeing.
Yeah, so we find out that like there have been a few instances of
Shoving.
Yes, shoving. Like that's
Literally.
the extent of it. Reanimated people shoving quote unquote regular people, and they're trying to make it out like these are murderers.
Right. Like all the thefts that happened, right?
Right. And over the course of this, we'll kind of get that like the reason that there's been a few instances of reanimated people shoving people is that people are
Self-defense.
Yeah, it's stupid, racist, idiot Americans confronting people in public, and the reanimated people being like, "Leave me alone," and shoving them away.
Right. Not even clocking them, just pushing them away.
Yeah.
They're better than I.
Yeah, but of course, this is an attack ad, so it's like, what's next? Are they going to all become rapists and murderers? Who knows?
Right.
Let's get rid of them before we have to find out.
Right. It's like, or they could just be normal people and we could just shut the fuck up and let them do their thing.
Yeah.
You know? All right. Anyway, that's pretty much that. And then chapter 7, we then are going to cut. Oh, Norman. And we're going to have the man's first day, first day that we know of him working at the firm, right? Mm-hmm. Norman is his boss, and he's the man has done a report for him and typed up a brief.
Yeah, and the boss is looking it over, and he's like, I usually have to make a lot of notes when the younger lawyers write up reports for me, but this looks good. There's hardly anything. I made a couple little notes. If you could go back in and make some edits, but like for the most part, this is really solid. And
he's like, yes, I will do that.
Yeah, and as soon as the man leaves the room, his boss
Drops
is like,
a slur.
Yeah.
Fucking.
Yeah.
I feel bad even saying.
I know it's it's funny because it's a completely made up slur for this book, but it just has such a intense feeling when you see it that as it goes, it feels more and more like because the first chapter I didn't know what and it was just like this is what they're being called, and then as it goes you're like, oh no, this is a slur, and it just starts to feel grosser and grosser, which is really a testament to how well this is written, that it starts to feel like a real slur. Right.
That it's taken on that supercharged history of all those other words and just here you go, here's the story. We all know what it means. It's what it's meant to do. It's meant to be shitty.
Yeah, exactly.
But yes, this is also when we get our basically a lady approaches the man, and they're having a conversation. What exactly was it about?
She's giving him advice on
dating advice. Yes.
Yeah,
because she's really good at dating apparently. Okay, to a degree, did you get neurodivergence from both of these people?
Yes.
Because I feel like her hyperfixation is dating, and I get his is just kind of living, right?
Yeah,
and she's like, yes, here's what you do, and she gives him bit by bit advice, and he's like, yeah, thanks for doing that, and she's like, well, people like us, we've got to stick together, and he's like, oh, paralegals, we got to stick together. No, she's like the other us. Oh, okay, you're okay.
Yeah,
you're reanimated. Gotcha.
Yeah, and he's like, "Oh, that's interesting. I never would have known that you don't have any mismatched parts. So he's just like she's like we were saying at the beginning. She's passing as a normal
living or There's a lot of things going on here. Unreanimated or non-reanimated.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I did appreciate that we get this brief interaction with this character where it's like, there are people who, are part of a marginalized group, a minority group that maybe get to coast a little bit more than because they are able to pass in white spaces or whatever. Right. But they still that doesn't mean that they have white privilege. They still experience a lot of marginalization, from various systemic stuff.
But good on her for helping out her community.
Exactly, absolutely, yeah.
Oh, also, we get a lot of talk about Augustus Rodin. If you're an art fanatic, this is your book too, because we're going to talk a lot about it. Balzac.
Yeah, specifically Rodin, but there's a few other things in here as well, and that like is another thing that makes the story just feel really lived in. You know, like there's just like references to things that we know that are real and everything, and that in fact, I think the next chapter is the man and Faustina on this date that Tina is the coworker.
Suggested, basically.
Yeah, so it's like an art museum that does actually exist. You know, it really exists, and the main thing or claim to fame that this museum has
is the Walking Man.
Yeah, it has a statue garden with several Rodin statues in it, and specifically the Walking Man, which I think Tina recommends as being one of her favorites. And then when the man sees it, like he
falls in love with it.
Yeah, there's like, and if you've ever seen this statue, or if you haven't, like, and you look it up, it's just like a torso and legs, nice. Like it doesn't have a head or arms. It feels like it's unfinished, but it also feels very finished. Perfect. At the same time. So obviously, this is like the same way that divergent people might feel like they relate to Frankenstein. Here we have an actual Frankenstein monster relating to this work of art. In a similar sort of way, like he understands the way that this thing looks real but isn't real and looks unfinished and like it's been disassembled, and yet it's by choice. So it's a really beautiful read on this statue that he's sort of experiencing. So I thought that was really cool.
And we even get a little bit of history that it might possibly have been like the precursor to John the Baptist, that statue. Yes.
Yeah, I actually looked them both up, and there's some similarity there for sure. But it is interesting, like the Walking Man one, there is something more compelling about it having, no head and no arms than like the more finished looking John the Baptist one. There's something about it that, like, it's the same way that we always talk about, the thing about Mary Shelley's novel that's so great is the spaces where she leaves things out or doesn't go into as much detail, that gives you room to make the story your own. And it feels like that's the same thing with this statue.
Exactly. It's perfect in its imperfection.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But we're interrupted in this date. Faustina's stepfather, Saul, a Jewish man, because she does talk about getting cheese blintzes earlier on.
Yeah.
So apparently she's okay with the Jewish food culture as well. But so she the father-in-law, her stepfather calls her in because her mother is going to the hospital. Something has happened.
Yeah. The man drives her there because she's kind of stressed out of worrying about her mom. Like I think they drove separately and met at the museum, but like they just leave Faustina's car.
She's a little worried, and she figures, hey, if I'm driving like this, I'm probably going to get in an accident.
Yeah.
And he's like, I can drive you.
Yeah, he's just being a good supportive partner here. They're still in a new position in the relationship where it would be a little awkward to do this, but, he's like, I'm going to be a good guy and be here for you in this moment.
I got to say, if you're doing this, the vibes have got to be right because, like, just hey, I'm going to go with you with during family turmoil, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of people would be like, all right, I'll see you. You go do your thing.
Right, yeah. And so, they get there, and, like, Faustina introduces the man to her stepdad, and then he's like, she does This is like the right thing to do here, where she's like, do you want coffee? And she has the man go get coffee for everybody, so that, like, he's not in an uncomfortable situation. He can be helpful, but not be, like, in the midst of a family situation that he doesn't quite fit into.
Right. But that almost seems like an intimate thing as well, just because you're doing something for her family, right?
Exactly, yeah. So this whole scene felt very real to me. And Saul,
for real, yeah.
Yeah. Saul talks to her. He's like, your mom just started speaking in Spanish, and like that she just couldn't remember English or something, right. And she knows
that I don't speak Spanish. And that's all she would talk in.
Yeah, so it was like he thought she'd had like a stroke or something. There was definitely something going on where she was, you know, a little off or whatever. And then he also, like, while the man's away, he's like, "So is this your boyfriend?" And he, he's like, you can tell he is a little worried that she's seeing a reanimated person.
Right, and like the typical dad, he's like, he's not like, he's a little different, right?
Mm-hmm. And I did like this too because he's like, I don't have anything against reanimated people. I'm not a racist, but I do know there are racists out there, and I don't want you to be put into danger because you're around a person. And I mean, I feel like this is definitely a thing that you will see today, like interracial couples and the white parents being like, we're cool with your black boyfriend or whatever, but like we're scared, like something could happen. You could be involved in whatever a hate crime, or your children could be like shot at by police or whatever. There is that sense of like, we're the good whites, but we know that there are bad whites out there, and so we're worried for your safety. And that feels like a very real thing. That's kind of a hard thing to talk about in a way that doesn't come across
sound
making
like an asshole.
Yeah, and like never for a second does it feel like Saul is a bad or judgmental person. No. He is genuinely happy for her that she's happy, but also worried for her safety because he cares about her.
Well, also I think it's important that it comes from a Jewish guy who's probably experienced this shit before.
Yes, yeah.
To a degree.
Yes, exactly. I think that's a good choice there, where it makes it a little more palatable, and it makes you just think about, like, there are so many marginalized groups who are dealing with their own stuff. And, right now, I mean, well, always, but like it feels like right now you can kind of look to several different groups who are dealing with different terrible things. And it feels like he's doing a good job here of like juggling all of that in a way that feels real and true to life.
Yeah, absolutely. And he reiterates, I'm not trying to be upsetting, I'm just stating what I know is truth, right?
Yeah.
Well, they get interrupted by Dr. Yi, who's going to give them a brief on what's going on with the mom.
Mm-hmm. And it turns out she did not have a stroke. She just had severe dehydration, and it caused her to get confused. But they're giving her fluid. She's going to be fine.
It's weird how shit happens when you get older. Like that. Just you didn't drink enough water, so now you're kind of off your rocker a little bit.
Yeah.
Or you didn't take for the ladies. You didn't take cranberry pills, so now you're going to see spiders hanging from the ceiling. Don't ask me how I know that one.
Once they find out everything's okay, they get to go in and visit with the mom, and Faustina's able to introduce the man to her mom.
Right. Well, she immediately goes, "Oh, this is your new novio, your boyfriend."
Mm-hmm. And we learn that the man knows some Spanish, like. He's able to kind of communicate with the mom, and she likes him right away. They're getting along. They've got some kind of friendly banter and everything. And the mom's like she's like, you all shouldn't be sitting here. Like it's a weekend night. We pulled you away from your date. Why don't you go out and have some fun? And Faustina's like, well, there was this work party I was supposed to go to tonight. I don't really want to go. And the mom's like, nope, yes, you're going.
You're taking your boyfriend, and you both are going.
Yeah, and she's convincing, and so Faustina's like, okay, we'll go.
Hey, mama.
Yeah, so they leave, and she's like, "What? I'll drop you off at your house, let you get ready. I'm going to go get ready, and then we'll meet back up."
Right. And of course, he's like, "Hey, I want to take a run before, I get a shower, and then we meet back up, right?"
Yeah.
Because he's got to get a run to clear his mind. I respect that.
Yeah, so we get another chapter with that, and the main thing in this one is that he's really feeling his mismatched arm here. Like, he's really distracted by it. I think he ends up giving up. Like, he runs a little bit, but not as much as he normally would.
Right. Yeah, it's throwing him off a little bit. Then we get a ABC World News Tonight with Eloise Miller, who, Secretary Miller fucking sucks, right?
Yeah.
She also sucks. Basically, she's they said it previously. She's a little bit of a Girl Scout, I think is what they call her.
Yeah.
But basically, they promised her that she's going to become part of the Supreme Court if Cadwalder gets reelected, right?
Yeah.
So she's like, all right, you know what? I'm gonna sell my soul for this racist card just so I can be on the Supreme Court.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, she's just, hitting all the talking points. And like, as we were saying, like this word has started to become more clearly a slur to us, the reader. Mm-hmm. And it like here, she says like, she says
Are
something
they
about
really
like,
people in a biblical sense? Boo! Don't bring that bullshit up. Like,
Yeah.
Adam was the first reanimated, or animated, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah, and she keeps using the term, and then
Are they
the
real
interviewer's like that word's a slur.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, it's not. Like that's PC woke nonsense.
people? Ah, isn't that the grossest thing when they say that bullshit? It's like,
Yeah.
you have no other argument. I gotcha.
And so it is nice seeing that like the culture within the story is kind of coalescing around the idea that whether or not this term is okay to use, and you got two sides of it here.
By the way, this is the most unrealistic part of this book to me. You know why? Because
What?
David Moore actually fucking responds to her in a negative. Like, he's like, you're being racist and full of shit. Like,
Yeah. I think by the end of it, she said the main things is, she hits home that reanimated people are taking Americans' jobs.
yeah, real Americans' jobs. Isn't that great? Don't you
yeah.
love it? Okay.
And so the idea is we're going to start imposing sanctions that they can only have certain jobs, that the important jobs they won't be allowed to have. And since other countries are still reanimating people, we're going to start instituting travel bans,
Right.
which, if you...
That's fun.
Travel bans was a big buzzword a few years
2008,
ago.
Or even before that, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still to some degree, but like I feel like it was a big, news buzzword for a little bit, and so that obviously felt very real as well. And I think then we go from that interview transcript to the man and Faustina arriving at the work dinner party.
Yes, at Leonard's party. We find something interesting out about Leonard. I don't think, well, they may have mentioned it once before, but he's gay. Mm-hmm. And he has a family.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, he and his partner have just recently adopted a child, which, again, this... I feel
they didn't. They didn't adopt it. I mean, Leonard might have adopted, but the other one conceived it.
Yes, yeah, it was an IVF thing.
Yes, but it's interesting. Okay, so I don't know much about IVF. I'll admit that right now. But I feel like this is probably something they can't do or won't do, especially. But my understanding is basically they get a whole bunch of sperm, they get a few eggs, and they just basically hit all the eggs with the sperm. And whatever happens, right?
Yeah.
Well, in this case, what they're doing is both husbands have introduced both of their sperm to the situation, and whoever's sperm found their way to the egg is the biological father.
Yeah,
so they had a friendly competition amongst themselves.
Yeah, they talk about it like, as if it's like because of the population shortage stuff, they were given this opportunity to like
a lot of the laws were relaxed.
Yes, exactly. Which it's funny, I mean, this book, has been written for a little while, and IVF is like a really, really hot topic issue right now in just like the past couple weeks here in America, because
especially because some idiots were passing laws that accidentally made it illegal.
Yeah, so what I do know about IVF is that like you were saying, they collect several eggs, they collect a bunch of sperm, they try to fertilize all the eggs, and then this is all like in petri dishes or whatever, and
then
then
plant them.
Yeah, they find ones that are viable, that have become zygotes that look like they're going to actually, continue to grow and develop, and then they implant them in a surrogate womb. But because of that, all of the spare ones that have been fertilized and have started to turn into zygotes or whatever, if they aren't needed, they're destroyed.
Yes.
And all of the bullshit abortion laws right now.
That effectively is an abortion.
Yeah. Which, is these
idiots.
Yeah, the idea that, like, if they're pro-life and want people to have babies and all this, and then this takes away an opportunity for certain people to have babies,
yes.
And really, reveals the truth in that all of these bills are not about protecting babies.
They're about control.
Yeah, they're controlling women. And so, again, this is saying, if you don't have a baby the way we want you to have a baby, right. Then you don't get to,
Right.
It's absolutely, controlling
It's like
women.
these morons think, it's the difference between biological women and trans women, right? All biological women can have babies except for they can't all have babies. Mm-hmm. There's certain issues. So your logic there is fucking wrong.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So all of it. Sorry. I'm going to get off my soapbox.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about this book that's so good is there's just all these little bits of, like, threads that you can really pull and sort of see things that are happening in our actual world.
Yes. You can literally hear the headlines as they start discussing them.
Yeah, and, like, part of this party chapter as well is the man asks some kind of probing questions about the IVF process that sort of come across as either kind of homophobic or maybe even a little racist in that, like, the gay couple are two different races as well. Right. And he's confused about the
black and what is the other husband's Alejandro is obviously Latino. Mm-hmm. Probably Chicano.
And I think the baby is black or
it looks more like Alejandro. So it's Alejandro's biological child.
Right. Okay, yeah. And so the man is like, why doesn't he look, like
Leonard?
Yes. And so but Leonard's real cool, and he's just like, oh yeah, you're just very plain spoken. I'm into that, and like they have this conversation. But like I think in the next chapter or two, we'll get a bit where Faustina's like, why did you that was kind of not cool the way you, and he's just like, oh I didn't know, like I don't I don't know how these things work, and I'm just trying to understand them, which also feels like I think that's a really important thing with looking at all of the different sort of marginalized groups that exist right now. We're not all experts on all of them. It's impossible, but it is important to like be open and try to understand. And I feel like that we're kind of the man there. He may have not handled that situation perfectly, but he was trying to understand, and he learned something, and presumably moving forward, he would handle those situations better.
Yeah, and I feel like, one, you need to be respectful of others. Two, you need to understand that they don't know what you know. Mm-hmm. So you all have to meet in the middle. Just accept it that they're trying to be innocent until proven guilty, right?
Exactly.
Because there are the people that ask questions and then they turn out to be shitty people that already know the answers. But yeah.
Yes. I feel like that's especially like in queer cultures, trans stuff, like there's a lot of stuff where it's just like the average person may not understand how all these things work, but it's as simple as like, I don't know, do you like they them or you what and if someone's coming to you in good faith with that and you give your pronouns and they may fuck up a couple of times, it takes some getting used to if you don't know a lot of trans people, but like if you're a person who's trying, I think it becomes apparent pretty quickly that like,
well, I mean, it's even true amongst different ethnicities and races and so on, right? There are certain things certain groups do. And, like, recently the La Chancla has become a thing that everybody knows what that is, right? I'm not going to say it. You look it up if you don't know. But, I mean, everyone knows when Mom busts out La Chancla, everyone fucking runs.
Yeah. But, yeah, there's definitely a lot about this, we're seeing that the man is sort of, he's a cipher for a lot of American culture because so much of his memory's been erased. But in every instance, he's just open and like, I don't get this. Explain it, and then I will move forward with this new bit of knowledge.
Right. And that's the best way to be, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, and I think as soon as he like tells that to Faustina, she's like, "Oh, of course. Why would you know this?"
Right. You've only technically been alive for 3 years, right?
Yeah. So I don't know. I found that was pretty cool.
Oh, also, in case you cared, his drink was Rum Collins from Thunderdome or Thunderball.
Thunderball, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he had like a
Thunderdome.
coworker. Yeah.
That's the Master Blaster, is what that one is. Sorry.
So yeah, he had like a friend or a coworker who was really into James Bond movies, and like he watched every James Bond movie to try to understand this friend, which like that again shows that he's like, yeah, that he's really open to like trying to figure out people around him, and yes, is neurodivergent. That's absolutely the kind of thing that I would do. Like somebody say, I like this thing, and maybe like, okay, I'm gonna become an expert in it just so that I can try to talk to you.
Right.
So I thought that was kind of cool too. The couple, they go home after the party, they like fall asleep together and everything. And
they express to each other they had a good time.
Yeah.
Which, that's nice.
They're like, we're seeing their relationship sort of form, and it feels very organic. Like it doesn't feel forced. It's like they're getting closer, but they're not close yet. But they want to be, and that it feels like a very like true sort of romance here.
Yeah. And chapter 11 will begin with this wild fucking dream that the man has pretty much on repeat.
We find out that like every night when he goes to sleep, he has this same dream.
Starts in a boat.
Yeah,
it's dead body.
And it seems like there's like 3 alive guys and a corpse, and the man is made to pick up the corpse and carry it ashore.
I'm not gonna lie. I thought this like he was gonna end up being like an ex-hitman or something, or he got involved in something and got whacked.
Yeah, I thought the same thing too. It felt like maybe this is a memory.
Right. And it's just a weird dream.
Yeah, it's a weird dream, but it does kind of eventually start to a little bit become a metaphor for his experiences.
Right.
I think I've several times on the show mentioned like I am a dream sequence hater. I do not like them. I always feel like they're a lazy way to get a metaphor across, and they're usually clunky and weird and unnecessary. This one I feel like is better than a lot of them, but I still feel like the book mostly would have been fine without them.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason why it adds anything is because the dream sequence later adds to it, which is... Yeah. I'm right there with you, though. Like, I'm only really for a dream sequence if it's in a horror movie and, like, it's actually happening to a degree. Like, Nightmare on Elm Street, you know?
Yes, yeah, of course. That... just a lot of cases, it's just like a way to be like, I'm going to do this surreal thing so I don't have to think too hard, and I'm just going to throw in all the metaphors in really obvious ways. Yeah. This one's, like you said, like, I guess the fact that it felt like it might be a memory was like a good fake out that kind of, kept it interesting as we go.
Yeah. But we also get that once he wakes up from the dream, he finds a Dr. Marcus Prieto, who left his business cards. Prieto worked at Clairvaux Industries.
Yes. Yeah, so because they are at his apartment, and he like when he wakes up from the dream and like goes into the next room and sits at his desk, and he's got this
the book.
Yeah, so he's got a shoebox that's got a children's book in it and a business card paperclip to the front from Marco Prieto from Clairvaux Industries. But then on the back of the business card is handwritten, "When you are ready."
Ready. Basically, call me when you're ready.
Yeah.
So wait a second. I thought they weren't supposed to contact people after that, right?
That's the whole thing, is they've got to be separated from their past. And so, yeah, the man kind of just sits there and looks at it for a little bit, and then he slips out of the apartment and goes for another run.
Yeah, that's the beginning of chapter 12. Yeah. And we also get an Anderson Cooper interview with the president, which, I don't see Anderson Cooper actually responding this way, but I hope he would. That he just gives her 10 kinds of shit.
Yeah, she's super racist in this, and he keeps pushing back, but she really just kind of steamrolls him, like,
she just keeps going.
Yeah, for it being like his show, she still manages to like really talk over him a lot and get the last word.
We get her slogan though, which is great and doesn't make me cringe at all. Make America safe again.
Yes.
Yeah. I hate to tell you, America has never been safe.
No.
And never will be,
Right.
I imagine.
Yeah, it's pretty awful. And then we go into chapter 13, where the man and Faustina are they're making brunch together, and it kind of is indicated that like some amount of time has passed.
Right. They're making chilaquiles.
Yeah. And they're excited. They're going to be hosting Faustina's mom, Veronica, and Saul. They're going to come over for brunch. And when they arrive, everybody's, like they're all having agreeable conversing. Clearly,
Saul brought the Prosecco to add to the orange juice.
Yeah.
I like your style, Saul.
Yeah, they're getting along, and clearly Veronica likes the man, but at
Then
some
we start
point,
talking about her actual father, Augustine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I also thought it was, it doesn't really like fit into the metaphors and stuff here, but like the relationship between Veronica and Saul is really sweet. Like, she's a widow and he's
a widower.
Cool. Yeah, and they're cool talking about like their first loves. There's not jealousy there. They're just like, we lost our first loves. We lost these people that were important to us for many, many decades, and nothing's going to take that away, but like we're doing this new thing. And
we also get Saul and Veronica's meet cute, which happened at a cemetery, so I don't know how cute that is. But basically, his wife had just died, a year ago. They were unveiling her, what was it? Was it her tombstone or was it her memorial?
I think, some kind of like tombstone marker or whatever.
And they even go to the explanation of how that usually happens in their culture, in Jewish culture. Mm-hmm. So it's like after 1 year, that's when they'll actually unveil the marker effectively, and then mourn after that.
Yeah,
for another year. But he meets Veronica, who's trying to put flowers up on her. I guess her husband's in a mausoleum. It felt to me like, maybe I got that wrong.
Yeah, I think so. I think that sounds right.
But she's trying to put flowers up in the vase on his plaque, and that's when Saul sees her, and like he's like, "Oh, she's beautiful," but he goes to help her, and that's when they kind of just fall for each other.
Yeah.
So a romantic would probably say maybe the spirits of Rachel and Augustine kind of put them together. But
yeah. And there is something in all of these conversations where like. The man sort of has a flash in his mind of a woman's face, and
he hears her voice.
Yeah, and like I think it's like he's experiencing like family for the first time in a long time, and some sort of memory is bubbling to the surface of his own family, and I think like as he kind of sees all this, he's like, I know what I need to do now. And in fact, I think the next scene or the next chapter is he's back at his apartment again, looking at the children's book. He even reads the book, and it's about Fernando the ferret. And it's just a kid's book, but he sees that it's
Betty the beetle.
Yeah, and we get like basically a summary of this whole kid's book. But the main thing is that in the front cover, in crayon, the name Fernando
Ochoa.
Yeah. So it seems like, a kid named Fernando who was given a book about a character named Fernando. And, obviously it's sort of implied here that like, this was my book as a child. Like maybe I am Fernando Ochoa. Right. After he reads the book and sits there, then he decides to go for another run, and starts thinking about like, I need to talk to Faustina about all this. I think I know what I need to do next, but I want to get her advice and see what she's going to think about all this weird stuff.
Right. Now let's cut to the transcript of the conversation between NBC Nightly News anchor Jose Diaz-Balart and Emily Ikeda?
We find out that the police have raided Clerval Industries.
Well, not just the police, the FBI.
Yeah. And it seems pretty unclear as to why, like, because the idea is that when the ban happened, the couple companies that were reanimating people had to like pivot to new roles, and they all did so. But I guess the FBI thinks that Clerval Industries is still doing something illegal.
It's heavily implied later that Madam President has kind of she wants to use them as a example, even though they are doing what's right.
Yeah.
Or legal. Not right, but legal.
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we get this little news clip about that, and then we go to the man
He's
again
back in
going.
Walgreens.
Yeah, you know, he's about out of the original like half batch of pills.
Right. And another cool thing that the pharmacist says this time is like, we still didn't get that. We're probably not getting it for some time. So if you want to take those pills that you got, just cut them in half. Just reduce your dosage by half, which most people, that's not a good idea. Don't do that. Take the dosage you're prescribed. For the most part.
Yeah, this is one of those where he's like, you know, it's not ideal, but if the idea is taking your normal dose and then suddenly having to go cold turkey, or cutting your dose in half and getting to carry on longer, it's better to do it that way. Right. So yeah, he's trying to give the best kind of advice he can in a really shitty situation.
Do we? Well, I guess we'll wait till we meet the doctor later on. But it's very important that the pharmacist is the one telling the man, maybe cut back a little bit, just drop it down a little bit.
Yeah, and he also says, do not try to buy from any like online vendors. There's a lot of people selling fake stuff, and they're taking advantage of reanimated people who are desperate, and you're not going to get what you need from it. So don't be fooled.
Hey, listen, I got this vial of colloidal silver. It's been helping me out.
Yeah. And so then we get this kind of like offshoot chapter where Faustina has been sent to San Francisco on a work trip.
Yeah, we get a little bit of a history of San Francisco to a degree.
Yeah, she was there for a while before, when she was in like law school, and she goes back and visits like her favorite restaurant, which is this sort of historic building, and like
she meets an old friend.
Yeah,
Nicholas,
we get all this. Yeah, we find out this is her ex-husband that she just bumps into.
Well, funny thing, he just divorced his second wife, so he's got two exes. So Nicholas isn't doing great, or I don't know, maybe he's doing too great.
Yeah, Faustina's definitely like, maybe if you've lost two wives now, you should think about your situation. Maybe.
Well, he says, I have turned over a new leaf. I'm going to become a paralegal.
Yeah. And she's like, all right, yeah, good luck to you on that. But like, she definitely doesn't really want much to do with him.
Yeah.
She ends up going to a bookstore briefly and then getting on the plane and heading home. But the main thing is, when she gets back home, the man is just sitting outside of her house holding a box.
Right. We get a horror movie scene to a degree, right? Like she pulls up and he's just standing there in the middle of the driveway.
Yeah. And she's like, what are you? It's the middle of the night. Like, I just got back. What are you doing here? And he's like, I have something I need to tell you, and it can't wait.
Yeah. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. So that's what our next chapter is. He shows Faustina the kid's book and the business card, and she reads it and everything, and he's like, I think I am this Fernando Ochoa, and I've had this book for a while now, but I think like the business card says, I think I'm ready. I think I want to know more now. I'm tired of sort of living this half life. I don't really have feelings, they're like the shadows of feelings.
Right.
And I want to become a whole person again, because I think that, it's basically like, I feel like I'm falling in love with you, but I don't know what love is.
Right. It feels like the feeling of love, but the shadow of the feeling of love.
Yeah. So I want to become a better version of me so that I can be a better partner to you. So what do you think? Like, will you come with me? I'm scared about doing this. I don't.
Now she has an interesting reaction to that. Instead of being like, "Yeah, sure," she's like, "Fuck you, man, for bringing me into this." Like,
Yeah, I did find this response really strange. Like, my first thought was like, when your mom was sick, he dropped everything.
He was there. Yeah.
Yeah, and so like
He's just like, asking you to be there.
Yeah, she kind of gets upset about it, and like she's like, I'm exhausted. It's been a really long day. I've done all this traveling, but I haven't known you long enough to like get asked this. So
right, which is, it feels more like she is still hurting over Nicholas, and like this is too much commitment for her right now.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But she says, I'm not saying no, but what I am saying is, let's think about it.
Yeah.
Give me some time to think about it. And he does.
I feel like I didn't love the way that she responded, but her sort of response to her response was good, where she's like, this feels weird. I feel like we kind of just fought about this, and I'm sorry about that, but like, just give me a little time on this. But hey, we fought. Like, let's have makeup sex now. And we'll go to sleep and we'll talk about it again tomorrow.
I like where her mind's at.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, and so then we get a chapter where the man, like, it's one of his run chapters, except no, he doesn't run. He's just like, they have their makeup sex, they fall asleep in bed together. He doesn't get up to run. He just like has this night with her.
But it still seems like he still has some soft screams. Basically, he's still having a nightmare.
Yeah, he kind of twitches and whimpers in his sleep like a dog having a dream or something.
Yeah. But we don't hear the dream, but we pretty much know what's going on.
Yeah.
And then, transcript of Oval Office meeting, October 29th, 9:45 a.m. By the way, it's almost Halloween. That's been kind of a looming thing.
Yeah. And so here we find out that, the president is continuing to, like, focus on polling numbers. And the new idea is if they get the attorney general... their office to like start manufacturing legal proceedings against some reanimation labs.
Literally just pulling up bullshit.
Yeah, and so the president is going to like put pressure on the attorney general to do this, and again use like possible appointments at Supreme Court and stuff like that as ways to like get her way.
Basically being a politician, but also just a shitty person.
Absolutely, yeah.
And move on to chapter 20.
Yeah, so we've got the couple waking up the next morning. They're having breakfast. And the man is like, I don't remember having eaten this dish before, but he's still getting these weird flashes of memory.
Well, she's like, no, we had that with my parents. And he's like, yeah, but I don't remember eating it before.
Yeah. So she's like, well, that's... Who knows what happened before? Like, we're not sure about that. But I think that maybe was a good indicator to her of like why he might want to know. Like, if you don't even remember meals you had, like you're really missing a whole history. Food is a big part of this book, and in that, like, it has a lot to do with cultural identity, and I think maybe Faustina realizes like, oh, he's losing a lot of his identity by like not having this full backstory.
Right, exactly. He only has bits and pieces and not even close to a full picture.
Yeah. So she's like, let's go for a walk. And they end up walking through like a nearby like community garden. And she's like, I used to be a tour guide here.
A docent, she calls herself. Which,
yeah.
I love it. Mwah! We need to use that word more.
Yeah. And so, yeah, she's like, I'll kind of give you the tour as I used to do. So she gives him kind of like a history lesson about the area. And they're having a really great time together, which is nice. Like, they had this sort of... not quite a fight, but they had a sort of a disagreement the night before, and there's something about that, like that next day, where you're feeling a little tender, and it's like you want things to be okay, but it's hard getting over that hump of like, I'm kind of hurt, and so yeah, there's something really sweet about the way that they like have this like low stakes way to talk and kind of get through some of that, and by the end of it, she's like, I'm sorry. I kind of snapped at you last night. That was a heavy thing to just drop on me.
And I was tired, and I just spoke to my shitty ex.
Yeah. But she's like, the more I think about it, the more, if I was in your shoes, I would have done the same thing. I would want somebody there with me who I trust, and who, I get it. You're scared. I want to be there for you. So let's do it.
I mean, shit, man. Like, imagining, like, you're with a partner, and, like, all of a sudden you realize, hey, my previous life was a lie. I need this person, or I want this person to come with me to find my actual life, Yeah. That's literally what's happening here.
Absolutely, yeah. That takes us to the next chapter, which is them arriving. Yeah. Which I appreciate this book because I feel like
it doesn't waste your time.
Yeah, he does a good job of like having these little like the interstitial chapters about running or the various transcripts that kind of fill in a lot of backstory without requiring a ton of lore dumps from characters, and then we also have this stuff where it's like we don't need if she's agreed to come along, we can just be there. We don't need the whole
drive here, right?
Yeah. So they pretty much go right in. They meet the doctor. He's like super charismatic and very friendly.
Well, he feels like a grandpa, right? He has his cat, Quetzy.
Yeah.
For Quetzalcoatl.
Yeah.
Love it.
And he kind of he does sort of get an opportunity to kind of be a lore dump character here, but he's like, we were doing all these reanimations and I started to feel bad. Like I get the reasoning behind some of the sort of separation from the past, but it didn't feel fair to you reanimated people to just be like,
we're just cutting you off.
Yeah. I felt like a bad parent. I was just like abandoning all of these children all over the place.
So he felt like a Frankenstein.
Yeah. And he's like, I wanted to give you some free will and an opportunity to connect with your past.
By the way, Prieto is effectively our Chicano Frankenstein.
Yeah. True.
All right. Fair enough.
So he's like, I started this process of leaving small memory triggering items with each of my reanimated creations.
But I always made sure to add on my business card when you're ready.
Yeah. So, if you are happy with your situation and you don't want to reconnect with your past, I'm not forcing it. If you want that, I'm giving you this opportunity. The man's like, okay, so tell me, where did I come from? What's this book about? Right.
Am I Fernando Ochoa?
Yeah. And Prieto's like, yes, this was a book from your childhood.
Yeah.
Apparently
you were Fernando.
Yeah. Apparently you had gone to visit your mom and you were driving home with a box of your old possessions she'd left with you. You had a car accident and died.
Specifically, your left side was crushed. But everything else was perfect. Pristine.
Yeah. So they replaced the left arm and leg and were able to... And, he apologizes for the mismatch. He was like, spare parts are hard to come by. Prieto is like a great Frankenstein, though, because he keeps reiterating, like, this was your past and you may be separated from it. But the important thing is you are a man. Right. You are alive.
You're not a monster specifically.
Yes. I'm not Victor Frankenstein and you're not a Frankenstein monster. A better metaphor would be that you're a golem. He gives him a book about golems and is like, you've been, sent out into the world without a past and everything, but like, that doesn't mean that you're less than the rest of us.
Exactly. Really cool thing.
Yeah. And we find out, so the doctor has this really useful system where like he has various books that remind him of each of his creations, where he hides their information so that if the FBI raids his house. Well,
the FBI tried to raid his house, but because the FBI are the FBI, they stopped after reading through some of the smaller books.
Yeah.
So they never got to his big pile of books.
Yeah. So he takes a book down from the shelf that he knows right which one to get, opens it up. There's an index card there with all of Fernando's information, and he's like, I'll give this to you, but you have to make some promises to me because your family in the past, like, they have mourned the loss of their family member. You can't shake that up. Like, that's not fair to them.
We're going to come up with a cover story. You're going to stick to it. That way they don't think you are Fernando. because you look different enough.
Yeah. And they kind of like talk about it or he does say, this, all I've got is your mom's address. You were unmarried, you had no children, but you were close to your mom, and I can give you that information just as long as you don't make it hard on her. And then he also reveals a very valuable piece of information, which is that
medicine's bullshit.
Yeah, the medicine is completely fake. It's a placebo.
Right. It's an antihistamine. It's fucking allergy medicine.
Yeah. Basically, this was part of the reanimation deal. Big Pharma arranged this so that they could just like get some profits out of this whole process.
Yeah. Got to drain that profit, baby.
Yeah.
From your victims, effectively. But we can see this kind of happening, right?
Oh, absolutely.
But then he drops another bomb because the guy's like, well, I'm without this, I'm going to die in 20 years. And Prieto's like, no, you're going to live for as long as a normal person would. Like, you got a good 50, 60 years in you, buddy.
Yeah, he's just like, why would you... we don't... we haven't even had one of you alive for 20 years. Like, that is completely nonsense. Like, there's no reason that we would know that or that we would have tested that in any way. Right. There's no reason for us to think otherwise. Like...
Basically, you've been lied to your whole fucking life. Your 3 years on this planet.
Exactly, yeah.
That doesn't sound what our government would do.
Right.
What? Make backdoor deals with Big Pharma and lie to us? What? Nah. But then we cut to another transcript. Basically, it's a newspaper clipping about the Attorney General, the AG, launching industry-wide investigations on all the reanimation protocols because there's been breaches, right?
Yeah.
And Prieto is kind of a breach. So.
Right, true. But yeah, and the AG is really adamant that this is not politically motivated.
Yeah, specifically, it is not motivated by the president asking me to do this for political favors.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and they're they're like, but we know that one of the Supreme Court justices is likely going to retire soon
or die.
AG's like, and their AG's like, I didn't. You said it, not me. I'm not admitting to anything.
Yep, lovely.
And
but yeah, then we also cut to the guy going for a run at Prieto's house.
Yeah, so now he's running in a new location, but
he doesn't know the streets.
Yeah, but he once lived here, so he should. We find out that like his mom lives in Oxnard as well.
Yeah.
So his run is kind of short. He doesn't really know the place or doesn't have these memories. When he gets back to the house, he gets into bed with Faustina, who's already asleep. And he goes back into that recurring dream, but now Faustina is there with him in the dream.
Instead of the body.
Yeah.
Like a living Faustina is there.
And so before, like, the dream was that he was forced to carry this body ashore, go to this, like, rock outcropping where he, like, tucked the body away in between some stones. But this time, he and Faustina walk there together without a corpse, and he is able to like look in the stones and see that there is a corpse there, and they kind of like do a funeral rite sort of thing for this corpse. So it's sort of like
burying his past.
Yeah, it's a sort of like positive reversal of the dream in a way. And he wakes up at the end of the dream next to Faustina and just kind of like cuddles up next to her and drifts back off into sleep, and now it's dreamless. Like, it feels like he's sort of had some sort of catharsis in having this dream again with someone with him. It's kind of the thing that he's been experiencing this whole time of like, he's been scared of finding out about his past, but when he finally got Faustina to come with him as like a support system,
that helped.
He got that cathartic sort of, he learned about his past. He was able to put away this weird corpse that he's been dragging around and pay tribute to it, and move forward in this new life.
Right. So after that, we're going to go on to chapter 23, the penultimate. No, the next one is the penultimate chapter. But they're sitting right outside of his mother's house.
Mm-hmm. And they kind of, before they go in, it's just Faustina and the man, and they're like, okay, let's go over the cover story one more time. We'll make sure we're all on the same page. Because one of the things is that because these reanimated people don't have a lot of their backstory or their history, they also are kind of guileless. They don't lie because they don't
They're honest to a
understand.
fault.
Yeah, they don't have a need to lie to protect anything. And so it was a really important part of like the cover story thing for it to be true enough that he could say it without feeling like he's lying, so that he could like actually stick to it.
Right. Which is interesting because, like, as a child, right, you learn lying to not get in trouble. But what happens when you come into the world fully formed, not giving a shit about being in trouble?
Right, absolutely.
Yeah. It's like, why would you learn to lie then, right?
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
So they go and knock on the door, and a young woman answers, and they're
He's like,
say
wait,
to-
I thought this was the house of Alyssa Ochoa.
yeah,
right?
and she's like, yeah, that's me. And they're like, but I thought she was like older.
Right.
She's like, oh, you're talking about my mom. I was named after my mom. She's dead. And so
Which that's got to be a little bit of a gut punch, right?
yeah, so the man doesn't get to meet his mom again, but
I feel like if his mom was alive, though, like, some moms have this, like, sixth sense, right? And she would be
Yeah.
like, you're my kid. Oh, shit, you're my kid.
yeah, I thought the same thing, that like this might have been a really hard situation for the mom, but with the sister, it's kind of perfect because she lost her older brother when she was young enough that like she's not going to make that connection. And when he's like, yeah, I knew Fernando, we were good friends, and I wanted to like check up on him.
Right. And she's like, but she does say, are you sure I didn't meet you at, like, his graduation or...
Yeah, you look something about you is very familiar. And he's like, no, I don't think we ever met, but yeah, I'd love to talk to you about your brother. And she's like super excited, like, she's getting to like learn about her past too, because Fernando died when she was so young that like, she feels like she's missing a lot with him.
Yeah. And, well, it's also really close to Dia de los Muertos. And so it's time to set up the ofrendas. And there is one set up for Fernando and for the mother.
Yeah, and the man shows her the book. He's like, at one of the, when we lived together or something, like this book got mixed in with my stuff, and I thought you all might want it. And she's like, oh yeah, we've been looking for that book forever. Like
We thought it was in his big box of stuff.
Yeah, it was a really important thing to him, and we wanted to keep it to like, memorialize him. So of course this is going to go on the ofrenda.
Right.
So yeah, she's pretty touched by getting this gift from him. And
she basically talks about how her father like died really early on, but also that Fernando was the first person in their family to go to college.
yeah,
And everyone was really proud of him.
yeah, like, and it's really cute because she's like, I would love to hear about him, like more from you about him. But she's so excited and so happy to be thinking about her brother that she ends up just talking and talking and talking, which is what the man wants. He wants that information from her. So yeah, she, like you said, we find out he was their first college grad. Everyone was really proud, and then she became the second college grad, but she went into school for like STEM stuff.
But
and
because of him.
Yeah, because he was a history major, and he was super proud of her because he was like, I'm just doing history. That's nothing, but you're doing like the hard stuff. You're doing the important stuff. So he was really proud of her, and that meant a lot to her and everything.
Yeah.
So,
by the way, he did go to college for paralegal, so that's where that came in. But
Yeah.
I do like the end of this chapter because after they're done talking, like him and Faustina are sitting in the car, and he's just smiling like an idiot, right? Mm-hmm. And she's like, "What's up?" And he's like, "I think I would have liked myself."
yeah, I thought that was really sweet too.
Yeah.
And
Could you imagine though if like you basically like learned about yourself and was like, "Oh, I was a piece of shit." That was the worst.
Right? Yeah. This is definitely much better than that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of nice too because Faustina, like he says this, and Faustina just kind of nods, and I think she has a moment where she's like, I don't really know what to say back, and then she's like, no, I'm gonna let him just live with these memories. He doesn't need my input right here. And they just drive home in silence, and it feels, there's a certain place you can get to in a relationship where like silence doesn't mean an awkwardness that we don't have anything to say. It's that we don't need to say it because we understand each other and we can give each other space to think and breathe or whatever. And that feels like what's going on here. It's not a bad thing that she doesn't want to say anything. She's just like letting him have this space.
Right. Now my next favorite part of this whole book, election night results. Legitimately, they start talking about how fucking wrong the polls were. Because literally the polls mean jack shit at any time. Because people lie, and they're not going to tell you who they voted for, especially if that'll get them in trouble with their family.
Exactly,
right?
Yeah.
Turns out, everyone went left instead of the what was it called? The wave. Remember that? Yes. The red wave.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
And we find out that part of that might have been that the polls
all the
that the president
reanimated stuff, right?
Yeah, that like a lot of the polls the president was using, they didn't even poll any reanimated people. So we had a voting block of reanimated people trying to protect their own interests, and
they were unaccounted for.
Yeah, and so they voted against the president who's trying to end their existence.
Right.
And
wait! You're telling me that a bigot would not address the people they're bigoted towards?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we love to see it. It's so nice when they make these. Yep. Exactly. So that's pretty nice. Yeah, we get it's like a transcript of election night coverage, and it's really fun. And then we get the penultimate chapter, as you said, which is sort of a really nice bookend to the beginning of the book. Mm-hmm. We have the man sitting down to breakfast by himself.
But he doesn't have toast and butter now.
He has the
pan dulces.
Yes. So he's enjoying, or there's two of them. There's a pink one and a white one, and he's trying to decide which one he wants to eat.
Another big thing is that she didn't have a hair dryer at the beginning, right? Because he's a single guy. What's he going to do with a hair dryer? You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
Yeah. But he finally got one for her.
Yeah, because at the beginning they make she's has to let her hair air dry and it gets really frizzy or whatever. Mm-hmm. But now she comes strolling out of the bedroom with her dried hair, feeling better. And she's like, you want to share these? And he's like, yeah, which one do you want? And they kind of, I think she ends up picking the pink one.
Picks the pink one,
yeah. So he gets the white one. It feels, like the moment at the beginning is sort of repeated here, but everything is better now. They both understand each other and themselves a little better. Right.
It isn't a one night thing. It's a definite relationship.
Yeah. She says, that she's getting ready to go visit her parents, and he's like, yeah, I'll meet up with you a little later, or, I've got a couple things I need to do. And she's like, yeah, that's fine. We'll see you in a little bit. They talk about, have you done the Wordle yet today? Which one places it very much in this time, but two is just such a sweet domestic sort of nothing kind of conversation that, how many times have you had this conversation with your partner, this little puzzles and stuff like that. And so of course she leaves to go visit her parents, and he decides to go for a run.
Then we get to have the final conversation with the president and her vice president that she called a stuttering idiot earlier.
Yeah. And they're pissed about the midterms not going the way they wanted. And this is where they emphasize that it's because we had this voting block of reanimated people that we didn't think about.
Right, but it's the vice president who turns out to be the biggest piece of shit, because he's like, well, so what if we just outlaw them as people? Just remove all that. And she's like, fuck yeah! Hell yeah!
He's like, we could do it slowly with executive orders. Yeah, what if we just, first we take away some of their job options? Then we say that they shouldn't be allowed to intermarry with non-reanimated people. Right. Then we can say that they can't immigrate from one state to another. Mm-hmm. Eventually, we'll just move them all to concentration camps and take away their voting rights. It's... And
you could say this would be the last option, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, there was a joke there that I wasn't saying.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. This feels like most of this book has felt like basically what we're already experiencing, and then this is sort of the cautionary, this is what could come next if we don't do something. Yeah. This is the most horrific part of the whole book, because it's it doesn't feel that far off from possible.
Pretty sure I've heard people make these statements.
Absolutely, yeah. So I appreciate that this book manages to kind of have a happy ending and a very like cautionary, scary ending at the same time.
Because could you imagine 2 years later?
Yeah.
Well, the good news is though, there's no way she's going to be able to pass that legislation because the House and the Senate are all the opposing side.
Yeah.
So fuck them.
Yeah. So it's going to take a lot to like it's going to be a battle, and we're going to have to keep fighting to maintain the bit of safety and autonomy that we have, and to try to gain some of the stuff we've lost back.
That is a life lesson for America right now: is do not ever let your vigilance slack. You always got to remain on your toes. You always got to be able to fight or ready to fight.
Yeah,
it's not going to stop until the last one of those bastards are dead.
Absolutely, yeah. And
you can cut that out if that got a little too serious.
No, I think that's what this book's all about. Like, it's absolutely the truth, yeah. And then we wrap up with another short little running chapter, and this one, everything is kind of coming up good for him at this point. He feels attached to his body. His head is clear. He feels free. It's almost like
he always does.
Yeah, there's like a runner's high here, where he's just like, is just really feeling everything the way he should. And it like, this felt very cinematic to me. Like, the running theme kind of carrying through this book, it felt right that this would be the way that it ends. This would be like the end credits of him just running, smile on his face, everything, wind in his hair, everything's great.
But in this case, he just wants to do something different. So instead of turning left, like, I feel like if this were a movie, we would always see him make that left turn. And this one time, he'll take that right.
Yeah, you can definitely see him just like stopping, looking at the street signs, and then making that choice to do something different. So he's not an automaton. He's not a monster. He's a person with free will, and today he's doing something different. And
just because he wants to.
Yeah, and that's why he deserves to be treated like a person, because he is one.
Yeah.
So really, really beautiful way to end this. Like, again, it being very cinematic. Like, I could really see this being a really well done movie in the right hands.
Yes, absolutely. Got to be the right hands, though.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to see. Of course, we Del Toro is doing just a standard Frankenstein movie right now, so I doubt it would be him. But like, boy, he could really make this into something special. But there's plenty of other directors out there who I think could do some really great stuff with this.
100%. Almost like a Wes Anderson to a degree, but maybe not Wes Anderson.
Yeah. There's definitely something to like that sort of aesthetic that would be nice. But like, I definitely feel like there are a lot of great, Latino and Latina directors who...
You couldn't let Robert Rodriguez touch this. Right. Too wild.
Yeah. But yeah, I would love to see what someone would do with this, and maybe we'll get lucky and see that.
Hell yeah. So another cool thing at the back of the book is basically some book recommendations that Daniel Olivas has actually mentioned throughout the book. So if you haven't read them, check them out. There's a lot of cool Latino books. What was one that they mentioned? And the Earth Did Not Devour Him, otherwise known as Y no se lo traga la tierra.
Yeah, I believe that was the book that that Fernando's information was hidden inside.
Yes.
That it did sound interesting. It did make me want to grab that. There's also a reference to Eileen Hunt's
Artificial Life After Frankenstein.
Yeah, which that I actually just had picked up a copy of that book a few months ago. I've not gotten to read it yet, but she's actually a friend of the show. Like, we're friends on Twitter and everything. She seems really great, so definitely recommend that book as well.
Of course, there's also Frankenstein.
Obviously. If you haven't read that yet, what are you doing?
Right, yeah. Why are you here? Go back. Go read that book. It's not super long. It's fine.
Yeah. But yeah, this book just feels very like fresh, and like it manages to handle a lot of heavy stuff in a way that feels light but also very respectful.
There's a lot of gravitas to it, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine a lot of versions of this book that would be less effective and successful than this. Like, I feel like he really threaded a needle in terms of like getting the tone just right. And I was really, really impressed. So definitely recommend it. It just came out I think either today or yesterday when this comes out. So if you hadn't already pre-ordered it, it should be available, wherever you get books. You should definitely track it down.
Absolutely. It definitely has our seal of recommendation. I don't think we've had a book that we've been like, don't fucking touch this thing. Right?
Yeah, we've been really lucky with some really great books.
Lucky. Yep. Absolutely. So yeah, absolutely check it out. The thing we talked about last time, what was that?
So we're kind of squeezing this in between some episodes we've already recorded. So I guess next week we'll be back to, as promised, we'll be talking about The Artifice Girl. So we'll get back into our regularly scheduled program. But yes, we definitely wanted to just interject this one in as soon as possible because we wanted you all to find this right when the book became available for purchase. So
absolutely.
Yeah. It's definitely, this is an indie author who's got a passion project here, and we love to support that. So definitely check this out wherever you get books, because we want more books like this to happen, and this is how we vote with our dollars to get these.
Fight the AI, vote for people.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, fuck corporations. Anyway, all right. Anything else we got to say, Anthony?
I think that's it.
All right, where can they find us?
You can find us on all the socials at The Frankencast. You can email us at thefrankencast@gmail.com. We're also on YouTube, and you can find us over at patreon.com/thefrankencast, where we do a lot more talking about books. Like we do a lot of other stuff as well, but if you enjoyed us spending some time talking about a book, there's plenty of that over there. Stories, we do some things other than Frankenstein movies there. So
we get up to some wild stuff over there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'd love to have you. There's free 1-week trials there, so you can check some stuff out and decide if it's for you. But yep, you're welcome over there. We'd love to hear from you. Absolutely. All right, anything else we got to say? I think that's it. Well, in that case, continuara!
Looks like you've survived another episode. The Frankencast is a production of FCR Media. It's hosted by Anthony Bowman and Eric Velasquez. Follow us on Twitter at The Frankencast, or send us a letter at thefrankencast@gmail.com. Our cover art is by Amanda Keller. You can find her at Keller Illustrations on Instagram. Our theme music is by Vivek Abhishek. Thanks for listening.